Samson, I had a lot of fun working with you today. You are a big bundle of laziness. I'm just kidding. He's a great dog, but he is pooped, as you can see. We did a lot of work outside, and he's kind of a lower energy dog, and he's a giant breed dog, so he's going to take a little bit of a nap, and this is going to be his roadmap to success. You can actually go lay back down. I just like to start out the video with the dog on camera because you're more handsome than I am. All right, so this is Samson's roadmap to success. Now, unlike most of my clients, the guardians here actually had a lot of things going on that were proper. A lot of people, I ask them what rules their dog has, and they tell me a story about their vacation, because I don't know why vacation, but they always say talk about vacation because they can't come up with a single rule. He has a bunch of rules. He's getting a sufficient amount of exercise. He is dog reactive. Now, we were told, or not we, but the guardians were told that he gets along great with other dogs, and he can get along with other dogs, but he is reactive to other dogs on walks. Now, sometimes shelters and rescue groups are just, they need to turn and get those dogs out. So sometimes they'll kind of take artistic license with the truth. And so I don't know if that was the case, or if he's decided now that it's been here about a month, he's going to start protecting his guardians. Now, to help that, I usually flip the leader-follower dynamic by incorporating a lot of rules, but the guardians already had a bunch. I give him a couple of extra tips, like making him sit at the door, breaking down activities into individual steps to help him practice it in the easiest capacity possible before we make it more challenging. And a couple of other ways to delay gratification, like feeding him. Actually, something we're going to do here in a set when we get done with this. I'm going to show him how to feed him. But if you can ask your dog to wait or do something before you give it something at once as a reward, this is a great way to train your dog without actually using a treat as a lure. So maybe the dog really wants to eat. Well, I put the food down and I don't allow the dog to be within 7 feet of the food. Then I eat something first as a human. It's important for whoever's feeding the dog to eat something first, because dogs, if they see you feed them and they don't see you eat, or you eat after, you either have lower rank if you eat after, or if you don't eat at all, then you have no rank. You have no social status. You don't even have eating privileges. So just by simply eating before we feed the dog can be really beneficial. The guardian here works with dogs, so I'm guessing she already knows that dogs have what's called a distended stomach. Do you know about that? Okay. So if you don't know what that is, basically dogs have a stomach that kind of hangs like a pendulum, and if they do a lot of lateral movement, it can actually flip up over their intestines and pressurize and explode. So your dog should never really be exercised with a full stomach. You should wait at least an hour and a half to 2 hours after feeding them before you exercise him. Okay, now, like I said, he's kind of a, as you can tell, kind of a mellow dog. So it's just the reactivity that he has is outside. Now, I want to give a dog every advantage when it has a behavior problem. So that's why in the video above, we talked a lot about all these leash tricks. It's probably a longer video than I normally shoot, but I encapsulated a whole bunch of lessons in that together. Now, don't be fooled into thinking that we do all those things at the same time. I think I articulated in the video, but we want to first start out with just teaching the dog just to not pull on the leash. As soon as it reaches the end of the leash, come back to us. Then we're going to walk with it here, and at first just a half a step, then 1 step, then 2 steps. And after we get to about 3 or 4 steps with the dog staying in the heel position, then I start pulling it away, half a step, then 1 step, or pull it up here, then walk a half step, then give the dog the treat. And you can say a word that means go in this position. Now, I usually recommend not using the word heel because most people train the dog the opposite of heel. Dogs have what's called an opposition reflex, which I talked about in the above video. Well, they're programmed to pull against the leash. Well, what do we do? We're walking with our dog down the road, the dog's here, and it gets out in front of us, and most of us take the leash and we violently jerk it to the side to correct the dog. This is why I don't like using leash corrections at all. But the dog, and we say the word heel. Now, dogs go through association, repetition, and good timing. You have 3 seconds to correct or reward the dog for them to have the ability to make the connection. But if the dog gets in front of me and I jerk the leash and say heel at the same time, heel means the human's going to try to break my neck. It has nothing to do with this position here. So when I'm giving a treat, make sure the dog's head is not in front of you. I mean, I guess shoulder aligned with my hip. Dog's shoulder aligned with my hip is where I would like to see the dog at. But if they're in front of you, they're going to be more reactive. So when I do give the dog the treat, I might say follow, or another word that indicates heel without using that heel word, because he's been probably abused he was definitely abused by his previous guardians. And so he's really lucked out. He's got some guardians that are really taking good care of him now. But you can tell certain things, certain interactions, he was struck or emotionally or verbally reprimanded or whatever, because he's very sensitive to certain things. So we don't want to cause any discomfort, and the guardians certainly don't want. And this is why you should never use a dog trainer that uses force or dominance theory. Okay, so basically, on the flip side of force and dominance theory is what we call positive reinforcement. And I showed the guardians how they can add a little bit of structure to petting with what I like to call petting with a purpose. So if he comes up and invades my space or nudges me or paws at me, he's telling me what to do. If I listen to what he says and pet him, which is most of us think of being a good thing, well, it's confusing him to thinking that he's in charge of me, because when he tells me what to do, I do it. After enough repetition, that gives him the impression that now I can tell the humans what to do, number one, but also I'm responsible for those humans. So from now on, when he comes up and nudges the guardians or invades their space or paws at them for attention, they're going to give him a counter order, asking him to sit, or in his case, probably maybe ask him to lay down. He has some hip dysplasia, and he's also got some other issues with his back legs. And for giant breed dogs, a lot of them, it's easier for them to lay down than it is to sit down. So as soon as he lays down, we pet him under his chin and say just the word crash, or whatever the word is. It should be a one-word command. Try not to use two-word commands for dogs. They typically key on the first sound that we hear, which is also why I don't like saying good this, bad that, go that. I call that caveman talk. Or saying a long sentence to the dog. If it sits, as soon as it sits, I just pet it under his chin and I say the word sit. Now, whenever possible, try to pet the dog under the chin. Never pat a dog on top of the head. That creates a nose-down orientation. Dogs that have a good body mechanic have a nose-up orientation, which is why I like to pet them under here, especially when they're petting with a purpose, which is for desired actions and behaviors. So from now on, what the dog learns is if I tell the human what to do, nothing happens. But if the human tells me what to do, and I do it, I get a reward. So now I identify as I'm asking the human versus telling, and that's a shift in the leader-follower dynamic. Number two, it shows respect for the human as the authority figure, and we're also teaching the dog that, you know what, you no longer can tell the human what to do. You don't even ask the human. You have to pay for it, and we're going to pay for it through currency of obedience. Now, the more that we ask the dog to sit or lay down or come or whatever these things are in the house, the easier it's going to be for them to do it outside on the street or in the alley or at the park or wherever it is. So if the dog is already sitting, I might ask it to come and sit over here. Or if it's sitting, I ask it to lie down. It just has to do something to change its state before I pet it. Now, what if I just want to pet the dog? I would still like the guardian to ask the dog to sit or do something to earn it. Now, if the dog is, and I also use a watchword for this. So if I'm petting Samson and one of the guardians comes in here and sees that I'm petting him and he's standing up, they're going to assume that I forgot to pet with a purpose. And they're going to say paycheck. If somebody says paycheck to me and I argue, no, I asked him to sit, you didn't see it, he stood up and I continue, then the dog sees it, we're on our own page and it can be on its own page as well. So instead, if somebody says paycheck and I'm petting the dog, I stop, I say sit or crash. When it sits, I pet it on its chin, say sit, and then I say, I asked him to sit before he came in the room, he just didn't see it. It gives us an opportunity to practice again, and it's just a nice way to help each other. We won't realize how often we pet our dog, especially at the wrong time. Now remember, anything your dog is doing when you pet it is what you're amplifying and reinforcing. And it includes unbalanced states of mind like excitement, but also fear, stress, anxiety, aggression. I frequently go to people's house with a human aggressive dog and they're petting the dog. It's okay, killer, David's here to help you. I'm like, please, for the love of God, stop petting your dog. Now if your dog is in distress and you want to let it know I'm here to comfort you, you can touch. Dogs, when they're puppies, cannot regulate their body heat, so they sleep in a puppy pile. They associate touch with affection. So dogs are very needy, will come and lean against you as a way of having that tactile contact. So you can let your dog know I'm here to support you without amplifying it. Speaking of which, if we come home and the dog's excited, we're just going to ignore the dog. Walk on through as if it's not there. Some people think that's mean not to pet the dog, but if somebody comes up to you with 22 cups of coffee, you don't give them an extra cup of coffee. You wait for them to calm down. So when he's all excited, he's in an unbalanced state of mind. We're not going to pet him. We're not going to give him any attention. So we're just going to go about our business. As soon as he calms down, then I turn to engage with them. As soon as I do this, usually you get a wiggle and they start getting excited. I just continue doing my thing and I ignore him again. And eventually the dog learns when I'm calm and relaxed, I'm very attractive to the humans. When I'm excited, they have no interest in me. And I like the attention, so I'm going to start being calm and balanced all the time. Now, most of us train our dogs to actually misbehave. When the dog steals our shoe, we go and chase it or we chastise it. It has an accident or barks or whatever it is, we correct it. Well, attention itself is validating to a dog, and dogs don't really see much of a difference between good attention and bad attention. So if every time he does something wrong, that's what gets me up and goes over to correct him, even though I'm yelling at him or whatever it is, and you shouldn't yell at your dog. But even if that's the case, I'm correcting or whatever, we're training the dog, that's the way to page me. This is the way to get my attention. So I practice something I call passive training. Passive training is simply waiting for the dog to do a desired action or behavior, and within that 3-second window, petting them and saying the singular version of the command word. Not sat for sit, not sit, just crash, just come. And one of the things he doesn't do is come very well. Now, sometimes I find if a dog has a word that it's not responsive to, it's been overused. The more you repeat a command, the less you mean it to a dog, which is why we don't want to repeat a command over and over. What we want to do is take the dog out of a high stimulus environment into a low stimulus environment, help it practice it in the easiest capacity possible. The easiest capacity I've ever found is what I call passive training. So every time the dog walks towards me on his own, I didn't ask him to, I didn't incentive, I have no treats, no reason for him to come other than he just wanted to come that way anyways. I reach over and pet him and I say the word come. Now, because sometimes we use words over and over in a bad context, sometimes dogs learn to ignore them. His previous guardians might have said come, and then when he came, something bad happened. So if that's the case, sometimes coming up with a completely new command word like here or attention is a better way to go about it. So every time he comes to me, I'm going to pet him and say the word come. Now let's say I'm in here and he came to me and I didn't see it. Remember, we have 3 seconds. My friend over here saw it. And so he says recognize, or actually I like to use fun command words. I have a client who came up with a really good one. They're black and they go to a really vocal black church and they say testify when you want to say something. So now they say testify. And if somebody says testify to me, I'll just look at the dog and I have 1 second to start providing affection. The person saw the dog come to me, that's 1 second. It said testify to me, that's 2 seconds. If I say what am I testifying about, I lost the opportunity. So if I say testify, the dog's standing, I assume he came and I pet him and say come or here. Or if he's laying down, I pet him and say crash. If he's sitting, pet him and say sit. So he's just narrating whatever the dog happens to be doing, and not good sit, not go, just the word sit. After a while, with petting with a purpose, shifting gears back to that one, the dog will recognize when I tell the human what to do, nothing happens. But when they tell me what to do, I get petted, and I get petted for sitting, coming, and laying down. What will happen, I know it's tough, what will happen is the dog will come start sitting in front of you to prepay for attention. Now, instead of us correcting them and giving the dog attention for doing the wrong things, we've taught the dog the things that we like. And we actually have a term for this in the dog behavior and dog training world. We call this manding or learning to mand, which means the dog can offer a behavior to get something else in exchange. So if the dog comes up and sits in front of a human and the human pets him, well, I like that, they're going to continue doing that. And then you appear to have a polite dog because you really taught it manners. And that's really a synopsis of what I do for a living, is I have a dog that has a behavior problem. The very first thing I ask my clients is, have you taught the dog how you want it to behave in that scenario? If we haven't, then that's our fault, not the dog's fault, because we're asking a dog of a different animal species to live in our world, and it doesn't know our rules. It's incumbent upon us to change the dog, to put it in a position to succeed by teaching it what to do. So what I do is I recreate a situation in the lowest level of stimulus possible, and I go through each individual step one at a time, and I don't go to the next step until the dog does the first step in the easiest situation, like a classroom scenario. Once it knows how to do that first step, only then do I the next one, the next one, and the next one. Then once I have all the steps separately, I string them all together, and again, in the easiest capacity possible, because now I'm putting them together. Then I gradually start adding back stimulus and making it a real-world situation until the dog knows how to perform. So let me see, what else? I want to talk to a little bit about, if I don't have it above, make sure you remind me and I'll add it. It should be above in the write-up by the time anybody else is seeing this, is I like to use something called counter-conditioning of stock dogs from barking. Now, we're in Brentwood and it's a condo, and so we have other neighbors that are pretty close by. So we don't want him to be barking like crazy, and we have a beautiful street here that we have a lot of dog traffic on, and he barks at chains and dog tags and people walking down the hallway, and sometimes we don't know what he's barking at. So what I want the guardians to do is make a systematic list of all the things that he barks at and follow the counter-conditioning exercise that I should have linked in red text above if you're watching this on doggoneproblems.com. And so the idea is to systematically deprogram it. Now, for stimulus, what I do is I make it less intense one of 3 ways. I either increase the distance, I slow down the speed, or I turn down the volume. Sometimes I have to turn down multiples. And eventually you can program the dog just because there's a jingling of the leash outside. Jingle a leash actually means I'm getting a treat, not something I should bark at. Okay, let me see, what else? The guardians want to make sure that they are eating something before they feed the dog first. Let me see, if the dog is standing in our way, we're not going to walk around. If he's standing right here and I wanted to walk towards the camera, most people, to be polite, would just walk around this way. Well, for dogs, burning energy is a way of communicating something is important. And so if I am burning more energy so the dog doesn't have to burn energy, leaders don't defer to followers. So if I'm going around here, I'm telling the dog, I'm a follower. I need you to bark. I need you to protect me. No, instead, I'm going to ask the dog to move out of my way. Now, if the dog is asleep like this and I kick the dog, don't ever kick a dog either, but nudge the dog and say, get up out of the way, that's just being a jerk. But if the dog's standing in your way, you should walk through without any hesitation so you can build a choreography. So the dog knows when a human's coming, my job is to get out of the human's way. That helps them identify, like I said, more of a follower. I don't want the dog to be submissive. I'm not the dog whisperer. Well, I might be the dog whisperer. Hopefully, my fingers crossed. But we're not going to use that the punishment base. We're going to teach the dog just basically through setting up stage scenarios and helping it practice the behavior and then rewarding it. So if it does get out of your way, you could also reward it by petting it. Now, if we don't want the dog to be on this carpet here that's right around the couch while a human's eating, that's what should be a rule. That is one of the rules I guess we did go over, is I would take a treat, let the dog sniff the treat, and throw it off to the side. And the dog goes off the carpet to get it. When it gets out there, I would say the word out. And I would then, when the dog comes back, I would do a second time. Now, it's better to do this when there's not food here first. Again, easiest capacity possible. Now, I'd also go to like the bedrooms and the other rooms in the house and teach the dog to leave the room by tossing the treat about 3 feet out of the room. When it goes out and licks it up, I say the word out, and then let it come back. And after a while, when we say out, the dog knows what out means and is happy to go outside on its own volition. Let me see. We went through off camera. We went through teaching the dog, no, we did it off camera, teaching the dog how to stay. Stay is a great exercise because it teaches the dog self-control. Remember, we're going to teach for the 3 Ds. First for duration, up to 5 minutes with the dog right here. Then for distance, and eventually out of the dog's sight, and then amongst distractions. Now, if you forget how to do that, make sure you message me. I have videos. I should run through the whole deal, and I'm happy to share them with you. Let me see. What else? Trying to think other things we went over. We can prepare him for success on a walk by exercising him a little bit beforehand. Now he has again some issues with his back end, so we might not want to use stairs, but maybe the vet said that going up and down a hill is great. We happen to have a hill right nearby, but the problem is we might run into some dogs there. So what else can we do to burn some excess energy? Well, when I sat down to do my taxes not too long ago, I'm a pretty active person. I rollerblade, I hike, I run, I work out, interval training, but I sat down and did my taxes, and I spent 6 hours just seated, not at all an athletic activity. I was wiped out at the end of that because I was using a muscle that dogs don't use very often, their brain. So what I'd like the Guardians to do is Google scent games and play games where you maybe put the dog in the bedroom and then you hide 5 treats around here and you say hunt. And then he has to go and find all these different treats. And there's a whole bunch of variables. I'm not going to go through it in this video. But teaching your dog to use its nose can be a great way to distract the dog. And it also it's very mentally draining for the dog. So if we play a little scent game, then we go out for a walk, we set the dog up for success. Now, a couple treats in the belly, especially a dog this big, is not going to create a problem with the pendulum thing I was talking about earlier. Don't overdo it. Let me think. What else do we want to go over? Well, this is not at all related to anything, but dogs sometimes do get cancers, and actually carrots and broccoli florets, the stuff on top of the broccoli, actually ward off 2 types of cancers. So most dogs like chewing on dense things, so giving them some carrots, I just give my dogs carrots as bones and let them chew it up. You get some interesting looking poop, but it's good for them. And then once a week, I grab the broccoli florets and sprinkle it on their food. Now, we switched over his food, the Guardian switched over his food, I should say. I always say we. And basically, when they did that, he still had some gas. So that tells me there's something in the food that's not agreeing with him. Now, we can do it systematically, and the Guardian, actually, I just kind of figured out is very analytical. We'll just leave it at that. So she's a very detail-oriented, specific person, I'm assuming, if she's good at that job. So she might actually look for foods that doesn't have a certain ingredient and start trying out different brands of food until we find one where he doesn't get gassy. Now, typically the higher quality, the lower quality food typically has more grains and wheats. Grains, dogs only absorb about 10% of grains. And if you change the food too frequently, that can give them gas as well. So we'd like to find a food that is obviously good for him, that's for an olfactory benefit, is not going to be farting up a storm. But also, if the dog is getting gassy, there are other things that are going on with the body that can also be contributing factors. So I like Origin and Akana. They're really high-end foods. Sometimes that's too high a protein mix for dogs. The one thing I like to do is just find a brand that the dog likes and agrees with them. Then each bag I buy a new flavor. What I do is I mix about 25% of the new food with 75% of the old food for the first day, 50-50 the second day, then 75% of the